Hello and welcome to the free speaker series at Hippocrates this evening. I know you guys are all enjoying your ice cream because ice cream is the best here at Hippocrates. I'm the director of the online program and I'm really delighted to introduce Gerard O'Donovan, our speaker tonight. He's come all the way from the UK with his wife to spend time at Hippocrates. But more importantly, Gerard O'Donovan is a leader in his industry. He was rated the #1 CEO in Europe, or in the world. Gerard, which is it? In the world. That's shockingly amazing. By CEO Monthly. Gerard O'Donovan's going to speak tonight about coaching as a force for good. I mean, as we all know, Hippocrates is a force for good. And coaching just may be the thing that helps you to stick to this lifestyle that restores your health and brings balance back to you and the planet. Gerard O'Donovan's work has brought integrity and professionalism to the coaching industry on a global scale. He's trained tens of thousands of coaches across the world, and he has tremendous integrity as a husband, a father, a gardener who grows his own food, and an enthusiast about his own health and the health of his employees and family. He was also rated his company was rated the best life and corporate training company in the world by Global Insights. And so we're so honored tonight that Gerard has taken time out of his busy schedule to not only contribute to our master coaching program here at Hippocrates, but also to speak to you tonight about coaching as a force for good.
Thank you. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Is the volume okay? You can hear me at the back? Great, perfect. Okay, thank you for giving your most precious commodity, your time. Thank you for giving that tonight. I appreciate that. What am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the subject I love, the subject I live for, the subject that makes up my whole life, which is coaching. And I'm going to talk about what is coaching, why is it growing so well, what good does it do? We'll talk about Hippocrates, we'll talk about the world, we will talk about how I believe coaching can make a huge and lasting impact on our planet and in the lives of tens of thousands of individuals. So, do we have any coaches in the room here today? Hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. If I get a bit confused, please jump in. Feel free to save me if I forget what to say or if I get it wrong. So, let's look at coaching. Let's look at the world. The world is in a strange place right now. Do any of you ever watch television or read newspapers or listen to the radio? You will have seen that right now we have groups of people all over the planet trying to hurt other groups of people all over the planet. Have you noticed that? There is a wave of what we would call aggression sweeping the world. Unlike anything we have ever seen in humanity before. A wave of aggression sweeping the world unlike anything. However, there is also a wave of awareness sweeping the planet unlike anything we have ever seen before. Have you noticed that? There are more and more people who have become aware that there is more to life, that there is something beyond this physicality. There is more out there to be seen, to be understood, to be felt. And people don't always know what that is or where it is. So they're searching. And they're searching in many, many different areas. And it's almost as if the two are quickening. There is a wave of aggression rising. There is a wave of awareness rising. It's almost as if it is coming to a head. So let's talk about coaching and why I believe that coaching can make a lasting and positive impact in the world that we live in. And how maybe it can impact our lives, or maybe we can be part of that positive change, helping others to build, grow, expand, develop, and create, and to be all that they can be. So first of all, what is coaching? Well, everyone is probably aware of sports coaching. If you think of the Olympics, athletes from all over the world, every single Olympic athlete, whether they are a footballer, a javelin thrower, a tennis player, a swimmer, every man and woman, every one of those has a coach. Because no matter how good you are, no matter how fit you are, no matter how determined you are, no matter how disciplined you are, you can only get to a certain plateau on your own. But by working with a great man or woman, a great coach, that person will help that athlete to reach new heights. Would you agree with that? Great. So that's sports coaching, and we're all pretty familiar with that. Life coaching is exactly the same. It helps men and women to reach heights, to achieve goals, to reach excellence in areas of their life that they would never be able to were they on their own. A life coach works with a man or a woman, helping them in areas of health coaching, wealth coaching, relationship coaching, career coaching, goal coaching, parenting, work-life balance, stress, and a dozen other areas. So I love coaching. I love it to bits. But coaching is mad. Coaching is mad. M-A-D. Coaching makes a difference. And here is the good thing about coaching. It can only make a difference for the good. If you do proper, what we call professional coaching, coaching comes from, we use the word is ontological, which means the answer lies within the human being, within the client. So coaches are non-directional, non-judgmental, and a good coach would understand that we have no answer. Coaches have no answer. The answer is within the human being. But of course, we in the world today, we don't always know that. We certainly don't believe it. We don't understand it. And then even if we do, we don't know how to reach deep inside ourselves to touch that power and to direct it outwards. And that is what a good coach will do with the men and women that they work with. So coaching is mad, M-A-D. It makes a difference. It always makes a difference for the good. What does coaching do? One of the things coaching does is it empowers people. It gives human beings back their own power. Because the world we live in today, we have what we call a transference of responsibility. Have you noticed that? No? Do any of you watch television? Yes. Yeah? We see it all over the world. You know, I'll give you a simple example. The medical world. You know, you go to and doctors are great, by the way. My middle son is training to be a doctor, so I love doctors. But here's a good example. You go to a doctor, you explain all of your symptoms. You say, let me tell you what's wrong with me. Let me tell you how I'm feeling. Now let me give you some money. Now it's your job to fix me. So I've told you the problem. I've paid you. Now it's up to you to fix me. And we transfer responsibility. Look at, people spend how many hours in front of television these days? A lot or a little? 6 hours, 4, 5, 6 hours a day. My goodness, that's a lifetime. And basically what they're doing is the same. You pay your subscription to Netflix or Amazon Prime or one of the others, and you're basically saying, here's my money, now entertain me. Make me happy tonight. Your job is to make me happy. So we have transferred a lot of our responsibility to others, whoever those others are. Coaching is all about empowering people, helping men and women to step back into their true reality, into who they really are, and to empower them. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to give you 4 or 5 completely different little examples, not connected, and then we'll pull them together. There are 2 competing forces in the world. Now, you know this, you've seen it. You've all heard of yin and yang. Well done. You've heard of good and bad, or good and evil, light and dark, night and day, up and down. You have to have opposites, actually. You have to, because in life, one cannot appreciate the light if you have never known the dark. So you actually have to have opposites to be able to appreciate the other. But I will say right now that there are two competing forces in the world today, or elements rather. I call one force and the other power. You can call them what you want, force and power. And I talked a minute ago about aggression and awareness. But there are two competing forces, and there always have been from the history of mankind. Force versus power. And when the two come together, force always wins. Always. Initially. I'll give you a good example. I live in England with my wife and family. By the way, I am not English. I am Irish. There is a difference. But the British Empire, many years ago, there used to be maps on schoolrooms around the world, and parts of them would be coloured red, and there used to be a saying, the sun never set on the British Empire. We're going back many generations. And the British Empire captured and took over a little country called India by force. And the thing about force is it needs manpower, it needs money, it needs resources, it needs shoring up constantly. And then along came a little man weighing little more than 95 pounds in weight. And in a very short time, with no or very little aggression, with very little violence whatsoever, this tiny little man took back this huge continent of India through power. Does anyone know what he was called? Gandhi. M.K. Mohandas K. Gandhi. So force always wins initially, but it takes manpower and money and resources, and power does not. And when the two go against, unfortunately, history shows force usually wins to begin with, but not always. But eventually, power can win. Coaching lives, we live, you live, we live on the side of power, not the side of force. So let's put that to one side. Paradigm. Everyone has heard the word paradigm. Authors use it in their books. You know, they want to create a paradigm shift. It sounds good. It's intellectual. It's articulate. It makes you sound intelligent. Not an awful lot of people really understand what the word paradigm means. It simply means when a lot of people think the same thing. You know, at one point in our history, there were maps of the world, and they showed that the world was flat. And if you sailed long enough and far enough in a direction, you would go over the edge. Do you remember reading about that type of thing? Yeah. You know, in the 15th century in Europe, 14th and 15th century, they put to death 1.5 million women. Put them to death because they had a knowledge of medicine and herbs and plants and natural healing, and they called them witches. And that was the paradigm at the time. In the 15th century, if you were ill, I promise you, the last person in the world you should go and see is a doctor. Because the doctors in the 15th century did a number of things. One of the things they did, if you were ill, they would let out the bad vapors. They would cut you to let the blood flow out. Mercury was not understood. And the word mercurial, i.e. as in from the gods, they thought that mercury was a liquid from the gods. So doctors, if they did not know how to cure you, would inject you with mercury. They killed more people than they ever cured. But this was the paradigm. So just because a lot of people believe the same thing does not make it true. Are we okay with that? Just because an awful lot of people stand up and say, this is the truth, does not actually make it the truth. Okay. So we'll talk about creating a paradigm shift in a moment. Has anyone ever heard of a thing called the Maharishi Project? Maharishi. The yogi Maharishi, he became very famous in the 60s because he hooked up with a group of musicians called the Beatles. Anyone heard of the Beatles? Yeah, and he came over from India, and he launched a thing in America and in Europe called transcendental meditation. Anyone heard of that? Hands up. Yeah, good. And it's a wonderful thing. I love meditation. I love it to bits. I teach meditation. We have worked in the past with a gentleman you might not have heard of called Deepak Chopra, training primordial sound meditation, a magnificent man. So I love meditation. But they did an experiment, and they call it the Maharishi Project or experiment. You can go on Google and look it up. And in the 70s, they got a group of these, what they call siddhis. And a siddhi is an advanced meditator. And they put them in cities in different parts of the world. And they put them in some tough cities. Rio de Janeiro, Detroit, Chicago. They put them in Sao Paulo and cities where there was a lot of violence and crime and so on. And they didn't tell anyone. They didn't put it in the newspapers. They got these groups of siddhis, advanced meditators. They hired a church hall or a community center, and they got these guys and girls to meditate over a long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's all they did. They gave them bottles of water. They just sat quietly, and they all meditated on one concept. The concept was peace. And you can look it up. It's a documented experiment. Now, before they did it, they measured the serotonin levels in the local population. And serotonin is a chemical, it's a drug we make ourselves, and we call it the feel-good drug. It makes you feel great, and you don't need any recreational drugs, you can make your own, okay? But the only way you can measure serotonin is it leaves trace elements in the urine. So they got their volunteers to stop people on the high streets of these cities and saying, "Excuse me, sir, would you step into this doorway and give me a little sample?" And they were taking samples from people before the experiment began. And the serotonin levels were normal. And then the experiment began. And these men and women in about 32 cities around the world meditated. And something incredible happened. Something unbelievable. The crime rates in every one of those cities plummeted like a stone. Rape, burglary, muggings, murder, you name it. It all just went down. And there are documentary evidence where local TV stations were interviewing the chiefs of police, and the language they used was interesting. They said to the chiefs of police, and in many cities, "So tell me, sir, here's the question, what's the problem?" So they're phrasing it that a lack of crime is a problem. And the chiefs of police, a few of them said things like, "I know, it's very worrying. It's very, very worrying." And they checked, and there wasn't a heat wave, because heat waves drive crime up or down, and big sporting events will affect crime. There was none of that. And the crime rates just plummeted. And then the meditators finished on Monday morning. They took samples of the serotonin in the population, and guess what? It was extraordinarily high. People were feeling rather good. So they stopped meditating. By Tuesday lunchtime, the serotonin levels were back to normal, crime was back up to normal, and the police chief said, "Thank God for that. My job is safe." Now, I'm telling you this so that you understand that human beings have the ability to influence others around them by the power of their mind and what they are thinking. And if you ever heard of a wonderful organization called the HeartMath Institute, anyone come across them? You have? Yeah? Oh my goodness, they're just to die for people, you know? They're just magnificent. And the studies they've done and the research, and they talk about a thing called the heart donut effect. Now, you've all heard of chakras, I'm guessing. Yes? No? Yeah. And you've heard of our auras. And you've heard, and we are electrical beings, as you know. We are 90-something% water. All of our cells are electrically charged. We are electrical beings. We give off an electrical field. So this we understand, and it can be photographed through a thing called Kirlian photography. So we understand that. But they did an experiment about the power of thought and the power of intention, and how you can influence those around you, not just by what you think, but more importantly, by how you feel. And it's not the thinking, it's the feelings. You know, you've all heard the saying, you become what you think about most of the time. Have you? Yes? That's not quite true. You do in a way, but it's actually you become what you feel about. But you need the thought to generate the feeling, so it's like a Kickstarter. But it's the feeling that is so important, and the emotion that goes with that feeling. What is emotion? It's energy in motion, the outward display of the inner feeling. So the HeartMath Institute have done some wonderful work, and they have shown that one human being, through the power of their thought, but more importantly, their feelings, can directly influence the feelings of another human being at a little bit of a distance. Do you know how many feet?
200 kilometers.
Almost. It's about 10 miles. It's about 10, which is still quite impressive. Not as impressive as 200 kilometers, I give you. But then again, if you look at the work of Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief, and how cells influence each other at an infinite distance. That's another line of research, but we'll just look at HeartMath at the moment. So a human being, based on how they feel, can influence other people around them and their feelings, even though they might be nowhere near them. Now, we have seen this throughout history, time and time again. In the Second World War, the Nazi Party in Germany, what percentage of the population did they make? It was 2%. But because they were quite emotive and they were outward with their feelings, they didn't hide them, they definitely shared them. Yeah, everyone else suddenly fell in line. We've seen it in Rwanda. Do any of you remember the massacres in Rwanda? We've seen it in Cambodia, the killing fields. Do you know what percentage of people were involved in that? Between 2 and 4%. But it devastated a country. We saw it in Stalinist Russia. So we see it again. And in fact, a topic for another conversation, not today, is you've all heard the phrase, the power of the silent majority, have you? Let me help you. The silent majority have no power. Never have had. Never have had throughout history. The silent majority have never influenced anyone. It's always the ones with the stronger feelings, who are usually in the minority, have created the changes in the world. Sometimes good, quite often bad. But the point is, those people who feel about something in a certain way and in a strong way can influence those around them to feel the same way. So let's look at that. Coaching is all about values. You and I, as human beings, we come into this world as innocent little babies. We have God-given values within us, and then we grow and we get influenced. And the truth is, we take on the values of those around us. We take on the values of our family, our community, our country, if we're involved in a religious group, we take those values on. And we take on the values of companies that we work with, believe it or believe it not. I'll just give you some shocking examples. There is a company, right, and I'm not saying anything bad about this company, I'm just giving you a simple example. There is a particular company in existence right now that is incredibly well run, very, very efficient. And when chambers of commerce all around the world are able to entice one of the top directors of this company to come and speak, they think they've scored a goal. You know, oh, we've managed to get a director from such and such to come and talk to us. It's a wonderful thing. This company is called BAT. Anyone heard of BAT? What are they? British and American Tobacco. They own something like 41% of all tobacco brands on the planet. They kill, their products kill 21,000 men and women every single day. Now, in 9/11, in that horrible event that everyone in the world knows about, just over 2,500 people were killed terribly, and the world went berserk. The world went crazy, and rightly so. We should be appalled at that. But over 2,500 were killed in one day. That's terrible. These products made by this company kill 21,000 people every single day of the year, and have done for the last 32 years, and no one says a word.
They're medical errors.
Medical errors, exactly. Now, is it me? And have the inmates taken over the asylum? Am I the only one that sees that there's something wrong with this picture? But so, are the men and women who work at board level within BAT evil wizards? Of course not. Of course not. They're good men and women. They're husbands, they're wives. They like to take their children out for picnics on a Sunday. When they have their board meetings, they don't talk about how many people will we kill this year. They talk about how can we grow and increase production and market share and stuff. And they disassociate those conversations from what those products do. Coaching helps men and women. One of the main things it does is it helps people to get back in touch with their true core values. And I'll tell you now, 99.9% of every human being is good. Almost everyone is good, you know. There are very, very few real bad people in the world. Most people are honest to goodness people, doing the best they can for themselves, their wives, their husbands, their children, and the like, you know. And we get confused. We get confused. We get confused by the media. We get confused by values. We get confused by television. We get confused by messages we're given telling us how we should behave, what we should do, if you own a red Ferrari, people will love you and you ought to do that because it's the right thing to do, and all of these messages. Coaching helps us to get back in touch with our true core values, to understand who we really are, what we really are, and what is truly important. And when you do that, people change, and they change for the good. Always for the good, never for the bad. And finally, let me now give you another little piece of information. They've worked it out. What percentage of a population need to, and the word isn't think, it's feel in a certain way in order to influence those around them dramatically? Do you know what the percentage is? 6% on my far right. Any advance or retraction on 6%? I should have been an auctioneer. 7 on my left. No. It's actually a magical figure. It's a magical figure. And I urge you to study mathematics and geometry and sacred solids. It's a wonderful subject to get into. 3% on my left. It's actually the square root of 1%. The square root of 1%. Now, I am told there are 7 billion people in the world today, or a bit more. Don't know how accurate that is, but this is the figures we've been told. If I had to go to bed every night and wake up thinking, oh dear God, I need to influence and impact positively 7 billion people, it would be too big a task to even contemplate. But I could influence 20,000 people, 20,000 magnificent coaches. If I can create, don't worry. If I can create 20,000 magnificent coaches, they can go out into the world and through their lifetime impact, who knows? You know, and as a young lady, as a magnificent coach, as a young guy, you have decades and decades ahead of you. How many people could you impact? Who knows? You've all heard of Tony Robbins? Antony Robbins? No? Yeah? Well, Tony Robbins has been doing what he does for the best part of 30 years. He runs weekends, Unleash the Power Within. He will quite often have between 5,000 and 20,000 at each weekend, impacting them in a lovely way. And he will do 10, 15, 20 weekends in a year and has done for 30 years. So someone like him could impact the lives of millions. So if we can train 20,000 magnificent coaches, then long after I am gone, they will continue to do the work and they will impact hundreds of thousands and millions. And we go back to that word and create a paradigm shift, shifting people's values, empowering people and shifting them to the side of power versus force. Do you understand? So my long-winded message is I truly and utterly believe that coaching is a force for good. And I believe that the universe always creates what it needs. It always seems somehow, I don't know how this works, but whatever is needed, somehow it knows what is needed and it creates it. And coaching is a relatively new industry. It was started as we know it today by a magnificent man called Thomas Leonard from Phoenix, Arizona. A bear of a man, 6'6", hands like shovels, huge guy, right? And he coined the phrase life coach. And bless him, he died a few years ago, but he left his legacy, you know? And today, we have figures from a little organization called PwC. Have you heard of them? Price Waterhouse Coopers, one of the biggest accounting firms in the world. They did a survey last year in November, so pretty up to date. Coaching right now is the second fastest growing industry in the whole wide world. Number 2. What's number 1? What's number 1? Sorry? IT. Have you been looking at my notes? Yeah. You're right, IT. Both hardware and software is growing like a volcano. But coaching right now is number 2. So what are coaches doing? They are helping themselves by building a wonderful career and hopefully earning a lovely income. In order to do that, they're helping countless other men and women to make positive and empowering changes in their own lives. And hopefully, if there's enough of us, creating a paradigm shift. But in a gentle way, in a loving way, in a caring way, in a non-aggressive way, in an empowering way. What is Hippocrates doing? In their own way, pretty similar. We could take the same words, the same adjectives, and we could apply it to what Brian and Hippocrates have been doing for decades. Helping people, a force, or I should use the word power, a power for good. Empowering people, educating people, helping those men and women to generate a force for good in their lives, sending them back out into the world with a whole new set of values, knowledge, perspectives, education, and that trickles like a waterfall that trickles out into the people they know and love and interact with. And that begins to create a paradigm shift. You know, I've been a vegetarian for over 22 years and now vegan. And I tell you, it's so much easier now. In fact, it's not difficult at all now. I travel an awful lot. I go to places like, we have an office in Poland, one in Romania, Bulgaria. So I used to go to Poland 6 years ago, and I'd say, oh, I'm vegetarian or vegan, and they go, oh yeah, I bring you some fish. I bring you some fish. And they are convinced fish is a vegetable, you know? But that's all changed now. It's all changed. And in the United Kingdom, in the month of January, the media, I don't know who started it, but they're calling January Veganuary. And it's in all the newspapers. Try and be vegan for 1 month. You know, give it a go. You wouldn't have heard of that 10 years ago. It would have been just, absolutely not even allowed, if the truth be known, because of the power of the agro businesses and the meat industry and the milk marketing boards and you name it, you know. And now it's not just allowed, it's promulgated and put out there. So we are actually seeing a magnificent switch and I won't use the word a tidal wave, but definitely a small wave sweeping around the planet, helping people to understand the benefit of plant-based nutrition. Would you agree? Yeah. And Hippocrates are leading that charge. They have been leading it for decades. And my feeling is if somehow we can link what they're doing with the power of coaching, then it's like putting a turbocharge on the message, and we can help even more people and do it a lot quicker. Does that all make some sort of sense? Yeah?
A lot of sense.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Or does anyone care at all? So, yes, sir.
I'm here because I had a coach.
Really?
That's why I'm here. Yeah.
He's to blame. She's to blame. Yeah. Good. Well done. Well done. And right now, I'm blessed to be working with 2 angels, Jennifer and Antony. I can see Jennifer. Put your hand up, please. And Antony there, manning the camera. And they are spearheading Hippocrates' online program so that we can take the program to many millions, because it's a big ask to come for 3 whole weeks, the time commitment, the financial commitment, the everything. It's a big ask. But when you've done the program, it's just as big an ask to then go back to your normal life, integrate with your family, who perhaps are not truly aware of these benefits, and to then carry on that process. Would you agree? You know, it's not an easy thing. And these 2 angels are, at this moment, creating a cohort, if that's the right word, of top coaches who will then be able to work with students from Hippocrates who go back home and give them that, not just online support, but real human support. Eye to eye, man to man, woman to man, you know, actually physical, proper human being support to help them carry on the lifestyle. So that's what we're working on right now. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, any other questions? No? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm curious. I have a friend I know who's studying and training right now to be a life coach.
Okay.
So one question that's constantly coming up is just from the business perspective, how critical is it to have a specific niche when you are pursuing coaching as business versus being more of a generalist?
Oh, what a good question. What a good question. All right. I'll give you the facts and figures, then I'll tell you what I think. Okay. We have our own research and development department, headed up by Professor Piotr Olaf Zilic in Warsaw. We're the only coach training company in the world to have a dedicated research and development division. And we have researched that right now there are 54 different types of coaching, different niches. So you could be a health coach, a wealth coach, a relationship coach, a career coach, a goal coach, a team coach, an executive coach, a wedding coach, a divorce coach. You could be a sex coach, you could be a confidence coach, and many others. But the truth is, that's all marketing. Right. You don't need to do any special extra training in those areas. Once you are a fully trained, internationally qualified coach, you can coach anyone on anything. Right. So that's marketing. Now, the figures would seem to show that the people who niche make a bit more money. Right. Because they know who their market is, they can aim their marketing, their wording directly at those people. I have been a coach since 1995, and I don't niche. The best advice I was ever given was by Thomas Leonard years and years ago, and he said, Gerard, he said, listen, son, he said, just coach anything that moves. And you know, I did, and I do, and I have certain likes. You know, I love coaching business owners. I can resonate with them, the challenges they have, the waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning in a cold sweat, worrying about what you have to deal with that day, and having no help and to guide you, and no one, and having problems that you don't know how to overcome. I can resonate with business owners. So I love coaching them. I love spiritual coaching, but I do not niche. And I'll come to you. So my advice is, to begin with, coach anything that moves. Okay? Get as much experience as you can. And if your heart starts to pull you in a direction, go with it. Always go with. I learned years ago, my mind is good, but my heart is better. And it's a fallacy to start working things out logically. Men do this all the time, right? Men, you know, they want to buy a new car. So they'll say, we'll work this out logically. We'll get some paper and pen, we'll work out, I want one with an engine that's efficient and a petrol consumption that's this and that. No, they don't. They will go with the one they want 99 times out of 100, and they will make their reasoning fit the what they're going for. Yeah, I absolutely, positively promise you this, right? So I've learned it's always better to go with your heart. Go with your intuition. This, in many ways, is stronger than this in terms of guiding you, you know? Yeah. Sorry.
So what advice do you have for somebody who's looking for a life coach? How do you go about finding one?
Oh, right. First of all, don't go with the first man or woman you talk to. Any good coach most good coaches would be willing to give you a short free session. The majority would. 30, 40, 50 minutes of free session. Yeah. And it's a chemical thing. It's a relationship. When you are a coach with a client, your client will tell you things that they won't tell their husband, their wife, their mother, their children, their brother, their sister, their best friend. They will tell you things that no one else in the world knows about them. And it creates such a strong bond and such a strong friendship. So even when you finish coaching that person, you end up staying in touch, Christmas cards and birthdays and all this type of thing. So there is a chemical connection. And you must feel right about the client, but the client absolutely must feel right about you. And there are certain clients, shall we say, who would resonate with me as a coach, and there are probably many who would not. Because I have my own way of doing it, and you would do it a completely different way, and you would do it another different way. And some people would resonate with me or with you, and so on. So ask her, suggest to her that she speaks to a couple, 2 or 3 or 4, get a free session from them, see how she resonates with them, how does she feel. There's a very good website called coach-finder.com. Coach hyphen is the little minus sign, sits in the middle. It's a registry, it's a listing. of coaches. You can go on, look at their photographs, look at their resume, send them an email, say, hi, how are you? I'm looking for would you be willing to give me a short free session? I'm looking for a coach. And any good one would come back and say, of course. Of course. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
No, let's say that you wanted to be a coach. Is there some kind of formal training?
There are.
For this, instead of just going to a coach and telling the coach that
Yes, there is and there are. There are now a couple of what we would call governing bodies in the world as well. There's about 8 or 9 different governing bodies covering different continents and countries. You have the IAPCM, International Authority for Professional Coaching and Mentoring. Stanford University has become a governing body. Stanford are very good. You've all heard of Stanford, yeah? No, okay. The ILM, Institute for Leadership and Management. And there are right now 900 coach training companies. I'm not saying they're good, they just exist, from Beijing to San Francisco. But a good coach training company, the average course is anywhere between 200 and 300 hours of training. Anywhere between those two. Some of it would be classroom, some of it would be webinar, some of it would be one-to-one tutoring, some research, some writing work, a blended learning program. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a little bit of truth and push you all away. I love coaching to bits. I love it, I love it, I love it. We've trained over 25,000 coaches in the last few years worldwide. And we train in 7 languages and we have offices in 25 countries. But there are 2 types of coaches. There are more, but just for the purpose of this little story. There are 2 types of coaches. The good and the successful. And the frustrating thing is the good are not always successful. And the highly frustrating thing is the successful are not always good. We call them Hollywood coaches. They're very good at marketing themselves, being on stage, getting press releases, appearing in newspapers and magazines. And so they're good at marketing themselves. It does not mean necessarily they are good at coaching. Do you follow that? Yeah? So coming round to your question in a convoluted way, a good coach training company would do 2 things. They would train you to be a magnificent coach, provide all the training, the qualifications, but they should also make available to you training, guidance, and support on how to build your business, not just initially, but they should almost be like the mafia. They should never let you go, you know, where they keep supporting you ongoing. And there are some good ones that do that. The top half a dozen, they all do that. Yeah. Any? Yes, sir.
Are there any other signs of a good coach besides your gut feel that you look for when finding one?
Yes, I mean, asking, of course, their qualification, asking their level of training. In the world of coaching, there are 4 ranks, a bit like the military. You have what you call practitioner coach, senior coach, master coach, or fellow of the institute. So practitioner, senior, master, fellow. And the way you move up is you do more training, you gain more knowledge, and you do more coaching hours. To be a practitioner coach, you have to have logged 60 genuine hours with real live clients, 60. To be a senior coach, it's 750 hours. To be a master coach, and I was saying to my group yesterday, I'm so annoyed at this, it's 2,000 hours. But when I became a master, it was 4,000 hours, and they dropped the standards about 8 years ago. Very annoying, that, isn't it? So a master coach has to have done over 2,000 hours of real documented coaching with real people. So you would ask the man or woman, are you a properly qualified practitioner coach or senior or master? And any good practitioner coach would be perfect. Practitioner coaches are magnificent. They've done a huge amount of training, studying, writing, researching, practicing. Great people, great people. The problem with coaches is they're very gentle people, they're lovely people, and they're not always great at going out and grabbing the business, if you understand what I mean, you know. They don't all have the eye of the tiger to go out and grab the clients. So that's where a good coach training company would come in. They would provide that extra help, training, support, guidance ongoing.
What are the amount of hours for the fellow?
The fellow is not ours. The fellow is different. You are invited by your peers to become a fellow if you have done something. What's the wording? You have to be seen to have contributed significantly to your industry. So pieces of research work or something along those lines. You won't meet many of them. There's only 7 in the world. So, yeah.
Are you a fellow?
I am. So, yes, I am. Yeah. But anyway, forget that. So, yes, sir.
What about, and I've heard about this, but having a coach take you to one level and when they realize that they take you to that level, but you need to go to the next level that they're not comfortable with, or as far as directing you to the next level or to someone else, versus maybe coaching you beyond the point where they're...
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often. It might do. It's certainly possible that you would work with a client, a client would work with a coach for a period of time. They would break through barriers, they would overcome obstacles, they would achieve goals, they would want to carry on growing in a particular direction, and it might be that the coach might say, sorry, Paul, they might say, Paul, to be quite honest, I'm not the best person to take you to the next level. But I could recommend you speak to 3 or 4 magnificent coaches who are that little bit more experienced than me, and they could take you there. That could happen, and it has done, but it's not the normal. No. Yes, ma'am.
Right, so it sounds like you're talking about coaches who are getting official trainings.
Yes.
There's just such an abundance of people. I'm actually working with a wellness coach.
Yes.
Who simply had a similar experience to mine and started a blog and hanging a shingle, and her credibility is proven.
I know.
Tons of clients, yet she doesn't have any formal training, and I know there's no accreditation.
I know.
That is truly
And,
recognized. So,
we
are they not considered coaches in your mind?
well,
Without the formal training.
any new industry goes through these growing pains. And coaching has become ever so popular. It's become the in thing at the moment, People like to boast about, oh, I'm sorry, I can't meet you for lunch. I have to see my coach, And it's become the in thing, and people boast about it. And coaches can make an extremely attractive income. They can make a huge income. So it has attracted an awful lot of people who have decided to simply call themselves coaches and just bypass the whole training qualification thing. It is frustrating. They're not bad people. They just people get confused, They're taking shortcuts. And all I say is to every client, what's that Latin phrase, buyer beware? Carpe diem, seize the day. Caveat emptor, that's it. Buyer beware. So all I say is clients need to just ask a few simple questions of each man or woman they want to have their coach. Oh, I'd love to work with you. Will you give me a free session? I want to test. Good. Where did you train? Where did you get your qualification? How did you come to do the training? Just simple little questions, and you'll know. But you see, there are some people, and I've met 1 or 2, who have been therapists, who have been management consultants, not coaches, but they are gifted. Just gifted. And they have made rather good coaches. And they haven't had an awful lot of full-on training. So it's hard to put them down. So I don't like to put those people down. I just say they're a bit confused. Yeah. Okay. Any other final questions? No. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.